Do you see any similarities between songwriting and coding in a Web3 context?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, music has to have like some fundamentals to it, right? So you've got to have, what key are you in? What chord progressions are you using? What mode are you going to have? And once you have those things down, then you can move on to other more expressive things within your music. Just like the blockchain too, like exactly what you're saying. Like you got to be sure you know how to store your private keys. You got to make sure you've got backup plans. You got to make sure that when you're engaging with wallets, that you have to realize like these are very sacred things, and you have to understand how they interact.
You're tuned to the ArCast, where we talk about the blockchain on the ArCast and how your data remains the ArCast, where ArDrive is the topic, censorship-resistant permanence. Yeah, we got it. And you know what else we got? An amazing interview with Cowboy Coder, where he talks about his new record, some upcoming projects, and the connections between blockchain and the music industry. Great interview. I really enjoyed talking to my man, Sean Flynn, aka Cowboy Coder. Full disclosure, I worked with him on his new record, but he's been helping us with a lot of our tutorial videos you may have seen where he's explaining how to use the CLI, to tag metadata, to create manifests, all that flavor. So it's an exciting week over here at the ArDrive RIO world because we just dropped, that's right, the ArDrive mobile app for iOS. It's coming soon for Android, so be sure to check it out. Anthony has a really cool video about how you can get your wallet on your phone, start permanently archiving things. Like, let's say there was an ArCast you wanted to archive. Well, hey, good thing there's an app you can save the MP3 with. I don't know. This week's episode is brought to you by Audentes Records. Those are our friends who put out some really creative, exciting blockchain-themed music. So let's get into it. This is my interview with Cowboy Coder about his new record, Code Rage. We're going to end the interview with a clip from his record, the song Code Rage, taking us out to the final part of the show. Thanks for tuning in. Here we go. Let's kick it off with Cowboy Coder. All right, friends, welcome to an exciting episode of the ArCast. This week, we have a man who you've seen all up on the ArDrive socials talking about the CLI. You may have heard his music. You may have seen the video for Code Rage. He's been an interesting new addition to the Arweave community as of recently. Please put it together for Cowboy Coder. Woo!
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's always great working with the ArDrive team. You guys are fantastic. Decentralizing the storage for the web. It's fantastic stuff, man.
Well, on behalf of the engineers, thank you.
Yeah.
We met because one of my good friends from college is your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And you met in Texas a few years ago. How long have you two been together? 6 years?
Yeah, back in 2016. Yeah, we started dating.
You know, it's funny, dude. It's like once you get out of college, Drake has that song, No New Friends, right? It's like your social circle doesn't grow, but people who are like tangential to like your core friends, you automatically have a kinship with.
And that's what's really cool. I always loved going on the Stanford campus. I always felt a connection to it, and I never knew why, other than the fact that it's like the most beautiful place on earth. But yeah, I always felt a deep connection to the Stanford campus and the school, and it's cool that we have that shared connection together.
You moved to Puerto Rico right in the middle of the pandemic, I think.
You know, we were in Texas, and there was a huge, massive snowpocalypse that happened during that time, and we were out without power. We were freezing, and we were thinking of like cool places to move, and like we got to move someplace warm. I want to go check out Puerto Rico. And that's kind of how and then when I came down here, I fell in love with it, and I was like, oh man, this is paradise.
So had you been there before?
I had been there years and years ago when I worked at a company called Surgient. They had a company event down here, and I loved it then too. Just any place in the Caribbean is really like just amazing. But I've been here once before, but I wanted to come down and like have that lens of could I see myself living here? And then when I came down and I went all over the island. I went San Juan to the East Coast, to West Coast, South, everything. Rincon. I went all over the island, and it was like where I settled in was like over on the eastern side of the island, across from Vieques, and just fell in love with it because I can actually see Vieques from where I'm at. It's kind of cool, but I might be doxing myself, so I better watch it.
Puerto Rico has a strong blockchain community, doesn't it?
They do actually. There's quite a few projects down here. In fact, the community that I'm involved with, there's a whole crypto community, if you will, that's interested in not only the crypto space as an investment, but the development of blockchain technology and how you can utilize different aspects of blockchain. So there is a big NFT community down here too, which is kind of interesting. I haven't really got into that because it's kind of a weird genre of blockchain, but yeah, Puerto Rico has amazing connections down here. There's all kinds of companies that come down here. Brock Pierce is a prevalent figure down here. he purchased the old W Hotel in Vieques.
You studied engineering or computer science. What was your major?
Yeah, that's interesting. I did my graduate work all in. It was in the business school under information systems, and so like that kind of got me into the IT space. I was more heavily into the sciences before then, but my foray into IT was through graduate work, and then in consulting. I went into consulting right out of university after I got my graduate degree, and I consulted for a big 5 consulting firm, and then I moved to Austin into the small startup community, small company called Vignette at the time. And that was amazing, and that's actually on the album. The B01 song is all about those crazy times, the .com boom and bust. And so I was in the heat of all of that stuff. A lot of excitement during that time. I mean, everyone thought, every software company was gonna like triple in value in 6 months and everything. So it was kind of crazy, but it was good times.
Yeah, that song B01. Yeah, it's about what they wanted to be worth $1 billion before 2001, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Your whole record is full of these stories where it's like your background in the tech world, moving to the Web3 space, and then becoming a full-time artist where you make music.
Yes.
And you came to the UK with me. We played those festivals. You've used your background in coding, engineering, in the tech world to do something artistic. And it's interesting how the tool that Arweave and ArDrive provides is the ability to like permanently document this story.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I love about where I'm at right now, because I get to blend all these different pieces of my background together into something that I feel like unifies everything. It's kind of like what you were talking about with like college, how like you have like whatever you have in college goes with you the rest of your life, right? And it's just really kind of true of everything that you do a deep endeavor on, right? So like when you get into a career like IT, that'll probably always be a part of me in some way. But it's cool to leverage that background into music, and then also to like leverage it with things like ArDrive and allow that to basically leverage blockchain and Web3 with music and technology. And it's just kind of a fun space to be in right now. And so that's what I love about doing artistic things, is that you can take those pieces that are part of you and elevate them into something that maybe you haven't explored before, or combine things that maybe don't seem like they might fit at first, but when you bring them together, it like you can create something really unique that the rest of the world hasn't ever seen before. And so that's like the fun stuff that I feel like I'm doing right now.
Right before the pandemic, I played that show in Austin with Schaefer the Dark Lord. And we hung out and we were talking about what it would be like to produce a record. So we started working on this album remotely during the pandemic.
Yeah.
What was really interesting was like we were sending files back and forth. Like we'd be writing lyric ideas down, or I'd be on GarageBand on my phone, like giving you like, hey, why don't you try this chord progression? And you're like, oh, what about this mode, these keys? And it struck me that like we had this whole history of how we made the record that was documented on Web 2. And now thinking about the new ArDrive mobile app, how dope it would be if we'd been able to just like send waves back and forth permanently through the mobile app, because we use ArDrive to help archive like Logic files and everything, but like to do it on mobile would have been so dope.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see that come out and be able to collaborate in that way. Yeah, it's going to be like a lot of fun to use something like that, because you're right, like that's what we were constantly doing, sending emails and texts back and forth. Hey, check this out. Here's a new demo drop. But it would be so cool if you could just be like, it's up on the app, and you can get notified right on the app, or you can, just right on your phone be able to integrate like some of the ideas that we were sharing back and forth. That'd be really cool. And that is the cool thing about ArDrive. I love storing all of the stuff that we've produced on there, because like you never know what's going to happen. You would cry, right, if you like, oh man, I lost all my stems because my computer crashed or something, right? Like it's great to have something that's permanently there. It's always going to be available no matter what happens.
We had, what was it, one of the songs, we had the violin sounds that we printed. We couldn't find the WAV file, and I was thinking if we'd use ArDrive for this was pre-ArDrive, like it would have been tight. So
yeah, completely.
But the record turned out really, really well, and it's really fun to work on. It's really fun to work on the promotional element of it with you. You did the Code Rage video with our friend Max. And let's talk about that really quickly. And let's talk about what Code Rage is and what that song means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Code Rage is the impetus of it's the name of the album, but it represents to me kind of like this tension that we have with technology and how it can be so frustrating at times. And as a developer, a lot of times when you're interacting with other people's code, it's like, can just be like really frustrating and maddening, like some of the things that can happen. So that song at that level is pretty much talking about like a developer just getting frustrated with coding. But I hope that other people can connect with it in the terms of like, it's really about technology and our constant kind of struggle with like, is technology working for us or against us? And that was one of the cool things about the video that I thought was that Max brought to the table, right? Because originally we wanted to kind of go into a rage room and kind of like smash some stuff up. But he brought up the really cool idea of like, let's do this in nature so that we have this beautiful contrast of like technology against the backdrop of nature. I think it worked out great in the video because you totally get this sense of like, yeah, nature is here kind of like watching over everything and kind of watching it play out, but it's there to kind of like remind us that there's a space you can go to even in the midst of your rage.
And I think that narratively, there's the pun of you're driving to get to the beach where you smash your computer. So it's like road rage.
Rage. Exactly. I love that. That we put that in there too.
Another song that's you dropped is the C++ remix of Cowboy Coding.
Yeah.
And Cowboy Coding, that's another theme throughout the record. It's in your artist name, being a cowboy coder. How does that apply to you as an artist, both in terms of like your technical background and maybe the fungibility of genre on your record?
Yeah. That's a great question, because cowboy coding has like this kind of stigma around it. But what I love is like the whole IT world is starting to kind of embrace it with agile methodologies and those types of things. And basically, it's just the notion of like being able to go outside the bounds of that which is constraining you and adding value and innovation into the world. And so like that to me, like it's very representative of the art that I'm doing as well, because like it's very unconventional. It's very, kind of unique in that sense that not many people are writing songs about, cowboy coding, right? and cowboy coding is basically just doing what it takes to add value to a project and to basically get things done, and I wanted to kind of encapsulate that, because it was something that I always had like in my past when I was at Vignette. It's a funny story how that name all came about, because we were working with a company out in San Francisco called Epicentric, and we were trying to merge a lot of things into the Vignette suite of products. And it was funny because like they were very academic and very theoretical, and they wanted everything to work in a specific way, but nobody could really get it to work. So we finally were able to integrate with them, and they would always call us, "Oh, you Texas cowboy coders down there, you always get things to work." And so like that, and that's kind of like what I like encapsulating with this whole persona of Cowboy Coder is like, yeah, we're able to create value when the academic and theorist can't get things to practically work. The Cowboy Coder comes in and fixes things, right?
It's like the archetype of the Western Indiana Jones character who comes in and kind of does things in by their own rules.
Correct.
And I think it ties into kind of your, correct me if I'm wrong, but your aesthetic, because like you're not stuck to one genre. You chose to do this album independently and market it yourself. So it's like you're not stuck to a label telling you how you should make music.
Yeah.
And you're using a bunch of different platforms. So like, how does your background as a coder influence your career as a musician then?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, because I've done coding in many different languages, used every kind of probably operating system you can think of. And I love that. I love learning new things. I love experiencing new things. And musically, that's where I feel like I'm grounded in a sense of like, what is my genre? My genre is that I don't have a genre, like that I'm eclectic, that I want to explore all genres because I appreciate the value that they can bring to us when we interact with them. It's like, that was the one thing I really loved working with you, because I never really was exposed that much to hip hop. It just wasn't like part of the scene of what I was doing musically, back when I was in a cover band and back, years ago. And it was great to get to experience that expression of hip hop and realize that it's accessible to everyone, right? Like, it's this universal thing that people can use to help bring out a musical quality. Because really, that's how, like when I wrote my first song, Cryptos Go Pop, I was a little intimidated because I was like, I've never done original. I always struggled with trying to write them. And you were able to show me about like the beat and the lyrics need to go together. And once you can get that down, like the rest will like flow naturally. And it was so true. It was like a light bulb moment, like, yeah, this is cool. I can do this, and that's what I love about hip hop. It makes you feel empowered. Like, yes, I can do this, That's what hip hop means to me.
In a way, there's the ethos of decentralization, right? Because it's about telling your own story. It's about the culture existing with or without the record labels. It's obviously hip hop has a different social context that comes from like a lot of the stratification of the social dynamic, especially in New York in the 70s, and like the tools that people had access to. But I do think there are similarities between blockchain and indie music in that, peer-to-peer. The only music that sticks around is if people talk about it and care enough about it. If you have a label that like forces a hit on someone, it only works if the song and the artists are original and have the staying power to stick around. So there's some similarities there that while we were learning about music, you really taught me most of what I know initially about blockchain and how dope it is. What was your first exposure to blockchain? And maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the themes about it on your record.
Yeah. Wow. The Cryptos Go Pop was actually my first musical venture into blockchain type of music. But I got involved in blockchain. It was probably like early 2000. No, it was later 2017, because it was like kind of when everything was kind of the first big bubble that happened with Bitcoin. But even after the bust of 2017, 2018, I was fascinated with the technology for the potential it holds for humanity. I feel like it's like this is the next great evolution for humanity. I know that might sound cliche or dramatic, but I think it has the power to give people like economic identity that don't have it now. I feel like it's something where like we can exchange value with each other without any third party involved. And to me, like that's so powerful. The first time I did a Bitcoin transaction with someone, like the light bulb went on. I was like, wow, you don't need an account. You don't need it to go through like a bunch of clearing houses. You don't need it to pass through the banking system, but you can exchange this value across the world almost instantly. And like that's like revolutionary in the sense that, you know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah.
you can exchange value with someone across the world without any intermediaries. And that's just really, really cool. And it's cool to see like blockchain itself is evolving too. So like then Ethereum came along and now you've got smart contracts where you can put rules and assignments around it. And then you've also got amazing products like ArDrive and Arweave that are decentralizing data and storing it across the globe so that it's accessible for everyone forever, essentially. And those concepts are like so amazing because they're bringing forth a protocol that will create new institutions, new forms of organization of humanity and people and how they interact. And that to me is like just it's so cool to see this come about. And I hope that it lives up to its potential and that we don't get all swept up with a lot of some of the negative stuff that comes out of the crypto space, but that we can all embrace like this new paradigm of like interacting with each other and getting into positions where we can like be a part of a community where we're all kind of intertwined with each other in a decentralized way. And that's the cool thing about data storage that's decentralized, because it's like I have an element of owning my own data, but it's also ownerless in the sense that it's distributed throughout the world. So there's really like the organization, the protocol itself kind of dictates how things are going to operate. And you can influence that when you have like decentralized autonomous organizations and stuff.
And now you can have the power in the mobile phone to do it anywhere you're at. Like the barrier to entry is so much smoother, which makes it so artists, creative people, anyone who believes in the power of data can participate. So it's like the road to adoption is interesting with any sort of blockchain, because there are technical things like I learned from you about like having ownership of your keys, being wary of exchanges, like tax implications, like how to be smart, how to double check your addresses and everything. And so I guess the question I have for you, Sean, is do you see any similarities between songwriting and coding in a Web3 context?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, you know, music has to have like some fundamentals to it, right? So you've got to have, you know, what key are you in? What chord progressions are you using? What mode are you going to have? And once you have those things down, then you can move on to other more expressive things within your music. Just like the blockchain too, like exactly what you're saying. Like you got to be sure you know how to store your private keys. You got to make sure you've got backup plans. You got to make sure that when you're engaging with wallets, that you have to realize like these are very sacred things, and you have to understand how they interact and how you have to guard yourself in some ways. Just like if you're writing music, you don't want to like say that you're a jazz musician and have no concept of music theory at all, right? So like, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's just a bunch of random notes, it's not really jazz, right? But if you have a musical background that allows you to understand the theory of music, you can become an amazing jazz musician, right? That can create all kinds of really unique sounds and rhythms and melodies that other genres wouldn't be able to. So I see that as kind of like blockchain is kind of similar. Like they all kind of use like wallets and consensus protocols and stuff like that, but they all have unique value that they add to the world. So like Arweave is the decentralized storage of the blockchain. And that's something that's like really unique and powerful that I think every blockchain at some level is going to need that. They're going to want to archive their blockchain. They're going to want to archive things that they've done in the past that can bog down their systems, but still need to be accessible and auditable so that people can still rely on the public ledger.
Your album has two songs about patience that I wanted to talk about real quickly. Let's talk about Infinite Time and product management, because it's a duet you did with Ash Tellum, and it's kind of sounds like a duet between a man and a woman, but it has a kind of a depth to it. So what's the story behind that song?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, because that's a great song that explores the concept of the constant dance between managing a project and the developer's time. And a lot of times the project managers think that the developers have infinite time. And the developers want to have infinite time, but of course we know they don't have infinite time. And so like it's this constant like battle between the two opposing forces of we have to ship a product or we have to get something done. We don't have all the time in the world to get everything perfect. So we have to do the best we can to ship things. And so like that song is all about like that constant dance between like, can you find a project where you can deliver everything on time and it's perfect? And you could do that if you had infinite time, but there's no real thing as infinite time in our reality as we exist today. So it's really like kind of touching on that whole notion of like, how do you get the most done with the time that's available to you? And it is like this constant dance between like, because developers by nature are typically pretty optimistic about how fast they think they can get things done. And of course we know like something always comes up technically that presents a challenge that sets the schedule back. And so in that song, it kind of talks about like when you're flying out into infinity, it may not be a lie, but it's in the vicinity. And that whole hook or that line is all about that notion of like developers want to do it. They want to like produce things in as quickly and as possibly as they can, but they can only do it if they had infinite time. So that's kind of the play on words there.
Being a project developer and managing engineers, it's not too different than like managing an album product. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And that's a great tie-in to those two things because it's very, very similar. You're right. Music has to have some form of structure around it. But here's the dichotomy about all of it is like the creative process is also something that's like can take longer than you think it might take. But if you don't push yourself to produce something, like you're saying, you may never produce it. It may take you years to get a song out if you're not, pushing yourself to the creative limits of what you can do. And that's what I loved about the musical collaboration, like what we did, because I feel like a lot of the demos I would give you would be pretty rough in some sense, and you like would elevate them to the next level, and then I could like add on to that. You know what I'm saying? So it was like I did one level, you brought it to another level, then I brought it to the next level. We polished it, and then like when Richard came in and did some of the live instruments that are on the album. I love that aspect of it. In fact, that's what I was really impressed with Ben from Absolute Bedlam podcast. He noticed all of those things because he's a musician as well. He's a bass player, and he noticed right away that there were live bass tracks on the album. He was like, "That's impressive in this day and age when you can just electronically create a bass line, no problem.
Yeah, or the live drums, right? No one really has room to set up a drum kit, and Richard added the live drums, which was really cool.
Yeah, it adds so much depth to all of the songs. That's what I love about Code Rage, because it's got that great bass line in it that's done live. And the drum, I mean, he did a fantastic job on all of the musical components of the mixing.
Shout out to Rich Matthew. We recorded the final sessions in Brooklyn, but it was truly a decentralized record because we recorded part of it in Texas, part of it in Puerto Rico, part of it in New York, part of it in Pennsylvania, and Richard mixed it outside of DC. And there's a
that's a great way.
Yeah, it's decentralized in that we didn't need a central studio.
Right.
We allowed the songs to come to us too. We'd have schedules, but sometimes we'd make final changes. We made some skits in the studio last minute. We changed stuff around. One of your songs kind of addresses this approach, Dreamscapes. So let's talk about that song and the sample rate.
That song is near and dear to me because it's the philosophical apex of the whole album. And that is resolving the tension of Code Rage. And that's what I love about this album is that and that's something you kind of taught me a lot about storytelling, about how to build tension and then the resolution of that tension. And that's what Dreamscapes is, really the resolution of the tension. And it's about going into a state where you can find solutions to really difficult, challenging problems. And that song was so much fun to write because it touches on a genre that I really love, which is what a lot of people call dubstep or chill step. It's this really nice get into a nice relaxed state. And then of course on one of the things we played around with, which I think is what you're alluding to on the sample rate, was we tuned it to 432, which is a different tuning. So if anyone's out there and is familiar with the concept of this whole, there's standard tuning of the C note, middle C, which is typically done in 440. And when you step it down to 432, it entrains your mind to be in a different state. So there's a lot of thought behind this song. It's a really subtle thing to pick up on, but there's a lot of philosophical and really kind of spiritual aspects of using 432. There was a great debate about this frequency back in the I don't know if you would say Middle Ages, but back in the time of the great classical writers, so Bach and Beethoven, a lot of them liked to tune to 432 because they thought it gave their compositions an added emphasis that people could connect with. And I forget all the historical details, but ultimately they ended up on the 440 standard, and that's kind of what everybody uses in this day and age. But it's cool to go back and do some songs in 432 because they have a different quality.
Code Rage is going to be available on all platforms mid-October. It comes out the 14th. The record came out really, really well. And then you're working on two other projects, one of which was inspired by a cover you did, right? A single you dropped.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a single out there right now called Kerncraft 400, which is it's a fascinating song because it's got this great story behind it. And it kind of talks about how things can kind of take on a life of their own. So there was back in the day, there was this Commodore 64 video game called Lazy Jones. And the whole point of that game was to evade your boss, and he's going into these rooms and playing other video games. So there's layers to it, which also is kind of a cool concept.
A metaverse, if you will, right?
A metaverse, if you will. Yeah, exactly. OG of the metaverse. And he goes into a video game called Stardust, and Stardust is the melody on Kerncraft 400. And the really cool thing about that is I think you might have sent me this documentary on it, but the producers of it kind of there were some different mixes that got released, and one of them made their way out of Italy to Berlin, and that was and they were like, they didn't really like that mix of it, but they were like, oh, it's just some small, producer out of Berlin. It won't go anywhere. But then like this major company came in and bought that recording studio, and then now they own the rights to it and they distributed it worldwide, and it took on this life of its own. And so that version became the version that everybody knows and everybody does in the stadiums, and they do the chants and stuff. So we did a remix of that, which is really, really cool. I love how we go right into the crux of the power of that song, and it starts off with that, and it because that's really what grabs your attention in that song. And so that's really cool. And so what's coming down the pipe beyond that is like taking some of these other video games, and there's great musical composition in these old video games, and we're remixing them with an EDM style genre and trying to like kind of relive some of that magic of that song.
Well, I think of it's like Plato's idea of the perfect forms, right? Like Plato, the allegory of the cave. That melody, that version of Kerncraft 400 with the singing isn't on Spotify. There's versions on YouTube. We were like, oh, well, let's get the license, let's do a cover, and let's make this available, because it's like something that didn't exist. And now, even though Spotify is, it's Web 2 or whatever, it's your most played song on Spotify because people are like, oh, look, it's this version with the vocals. So it's like reverse engineering, going back and being like, oh, what's missing from this? There's one song we worked on where you then went and added vocal samples, computer vocals over it that reinforce the theme. So it's like, what is the most clear representation of these computer songs and how to produce them in a new context, the video game song. So it's a really cool project. I'm super excited about it. That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we're working on some songs about maybe some extraterrestrial experiences, a story. Yes. It's like a theme record. We could probably tease a little bit about that. What's that story about?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I've always been fascinated by kind of the UFO phenomenon, if you will. And so this new album coming out, it's kind of touches on Skinwalker Ranch, which is a very prominent place within the mythology of UFO lore. And so we're gonna have a whole, it's kind of a concept album that goes along and kind of describes what's going on at the ranch and how somebody who's involved with the ranch from a young age comes back and is going to uncover the mysteries of the ranch, of Skinwalker Ranch. And so it's really exciting because it is a very mysterious place. There's a lot of lore around it. There's a lot of strange things that happen. And one thing I love about this whole concept is I'm really big into evolution too. I love how things evolve. And I feel like this is like the ultimate evolution of humanity, is to go beyond the stars or to connect with things beyond the stars. And so this whole album is kind of like a metaphor for that concept of like evolving to your highest level. So yeah.
And whether you believe in a higher power or not, this world and this universe are both very mysterious and pretty miraculous. And it's like having the technology to document our experiences is dope. Having the ability to store it forever and conveniently in the from your phone. And like we talked about some of the records, we talked about the new album coming out, but anything else that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, I think we covered most of the things that are kind of on the immediate horizon. Looking out like 2 years, 3 years, I'm hoping that this musical journey just continues. I hope the audience that comes to enjoy this music really connects with a lot of the layers to these songs. That's what I love about like any kind of great art, in my opinion, has like so many layers to it. So like if you look at something like Harry Potter, it's like it could just be somebody's magical fantasy world, But when you look deeper, there's so many layers to it. And that's what I love about like Code Rage. There's so many, really, there's a lot of depth in the album in terms of the intention behind it, the level of thought that was put into the structure of it. And I hope people can appreciate that. I hope people can connect with it. And I hope there's an audience that really embraces it and will encourage me to keep creating these types of things, because it's so much fun to do. And it would be a dream come true to like have that be my primary focus in life, to create stuff that people can enjoy. That's a blessing.
Where can people follow you online, and what's your Twitter and stuff?
So I'm on Twitter at Cowboy Coder TX. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Cowboy Coder TX as well on there. I'm also on SoundCloud, Spotify, and I guess all DistroKid like pushes it out to everything. So all the streaming platforms you can imagine, Pandora, Apple, all of those types of things. And those are the main places you can find me. I've also got a YouTube channel. I always forget that, but I've got the video out there right now. So go check it out. It's a fun video, and I hope you can connect with it and resolve your Code Rage angst.
Well, just like Cowboy Coder is destroying the barriers between genres, check out his video and watch him smash some old computer monitors on the beach.
That's right.
Thank you for all you do to help educate the ArDrive community, and thank you for being on the ArCast. I think this was a really great episode, Cowboy Coder. We appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's great being involved with the Arweave community. I love everybody I've interacted with. You guys really have a great, welcoming community here, and I hope more people get involved, because it's great technology to use. And thanks for having me on.
Just like you've been taking down them steers at the rodeo, know before you lasso with ArDrive Mobile.
No, before you lasso. Yeah.
What? Oh my God. How can someone write code like this? No documented options? I think I'm gonna lose my mind. This code doesn't really make any sense. It's like a novel from the future written in the past tense. It loops and loops until the end of time. It's even got a tab at the end of every line. Looking at this code really hurts my head. Looking at this code really makes me see red. When it comes to sloppy code, you can count on 10. Somebody hit the kill switch, cause this code should be dead. Code rage up in my head. Code rage makes me see red. Code rage, I call it code rage. I call it code rage. You're getting Cowboy Coder pissed with that code rage up in my head. Code rage makes me see red. Code rage, I call it code rage. I call it code rage. You're getting Cowboy Coder pissed with that tabs over spaces. It's giving me code rage. More error handling. It's giving me code rage. Cryptic data values are giving me code rage. Undocumented options are giving me code rage. Infinite loops. It's giving me code rage. Yeah, as far as logging, it's giving me code rage. Out of space errors are giving me code rage. Flaw control logic. Giving Cowboy Coder code rage. Code rage up in my head. Code rage makes me see red. Code rage, I call it code rage. I call it code rage. You're getting Cowboy Coder pissed with that code rage up in my head. Code rage makes me see red. Code rage, I call it code rage. I call it code rage. You're getting Cowboy Coder pissed with that.
Like that's something that pisses me off for sure.
You know what doesn't piss us off? Wonderful interviews on the ArCast, like that last one. Thank you, Sean. Great talking to you. Be sure to check back in 2 weeks with more exciting discussions about blockchain, Web3, culture, where we're going, data permanence, and all that stuff. Be sure to check out Inferno. We are still offering ArDrive tokens for you to upload all of that exciting data. So stay up on that. Check out the mobile app. Shout out to our awesome engineers, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for listening. I'm Andrew, and this has been the ArCast. Know before you lasso.